Welcome to the channel. Today, we have an intense story about trust, deception, and courage. 10-year-old Malik starts to suspect something isn't right about his mother's fiancé, Dante. When Malik uncovers a dark plan that could destroy his family, he must find the strength to stop it before it's too late. Before we dive into this gripping story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting tales. Ready to see how Malik takes a stand to protect his family? Let's get started. The sun poured in through the kitchen window, casting a soft, golden glow over the table where 10-year-old Malik sat, legs swinging beneath his chair. He pushed his cereal around with his spoon, but his appetite had vanished. His mind was far from breakfast and the soft hum of morning in the house. His mother, Layla, was busy at the stove, humming softly to herself, a melody he didn't recognize but one that clearly came from a place of happiness. This was supposed to be a peaceful morning, like so many others before Dante came into their lives. Now the air in the house felt different, heavier, as though every corner of their small kitchen had been taken over by the presence of someone else. Dante. Malik's lips tightened at the thought of him. Dante had been around for months now, and at first, Malik had wanted to like him. He'd tried. Dante was charming, always knew what to say to make people laugh, and he even seemed to like Malik too. He took him to basketball games, bought him a new pair of sneakers, and always made an effort to include him. But no matter how hard Dante tried, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He wasn't sure if it was the way Dante's eyes lingered on things a little too long, or how his smile never quite reached his eyes when no one else was looking. Whatever it was, it made Malik's stomach twist in discomfort. His mom, though, she was different since Dante entered their lives. She was smiling again, laughing the way she used to before everything with his father fell apart. Malik couldn't remember the last time he had seen her so alive, so full of joy. It was as though Dante had swept away all the sadness that had settled in their home. And yet, for Malik, something didn't feel right. Beneath all the charm, all the gifts, and all the smiles, something dark lurked beneath the surface. Guess what? Layla's voice broke through Malik's thoughts, her excitement evident even before she turned to face him. Malik looked up from his bowl, blinking. "What?" he asked, trying to match her enthusiasm. Layla turned to him, her face glowing with happiness. "Dante proposed last night," she exclaimed, holding up her hand to show off the modest but beautiful ring that sparkled on her finger. "We're getting married next month." The words hit Malik like a tidal wave. The spoon slipped from his hand, clattering into the bowl of milk, splashing droplets onto the table. "Married?" His voice was barely a whisper. His mind was spinning. Married? His mother couldn't be serious? Could she? A knot of dread tightened in his chest, threatening to choke him. "Next month?" Layla nodded, her face radiating happiness, her eyes so bright with excitement that it made Malik's stomach churn even more. "Yes, isn't it amazing?" She came over, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, pulling him into a hug. "This is going to be a new beginning for us, Malik, a fresh start. I know things haven't been easy, but now, with Dante, it'll be different." Malik tried to return the hug, but his arms felt heavy. He could only manage a weak smile as she pulled away, but his heart raced with fear. He should have been happy for her. She deserved to be happy. But something deep inside him screamed that this was wrong. Before he could say anything more, the doorbell rang, and he didn't need to look to know it was Dante. His mother hurried to answer the door, her laughter floating through the house as she greeted him. Malik sat frozen at the kitchen table, his mind spinning with dread. Dante appeared moments later, striding into the kitchen with his perfect too-white smile, his sharp suit, and the confident ease that always made Malik's stomach tighten. Dante moved through the house as if he already owned it, and in some ways it felt like he did. "Hey, champ," Dante greeted, reaching out to ruffle Malik's hair as he sat down beside him. "You ready for that big game this weekend? I'll be cheering you on." "Yeah," Malik mumbled, avoiding eye contact, feeling the familiar knot in his stomach twist painfully. He pushed his cereal around in the bowl, forcing himself to smile back, but inside, all he wanted was for Dante to leave. As the two adults talked about wedding plans and smiled at each other, Malik felt like an outsider in his own home. He couldn't explain why, but everything about Dante seemed wrong. And worse, He felt completely powerless to stop what was coming. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Malik lay wide awake in his room, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. He couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had been growing since his mother's announcement. His mom always told him to trust his instincts, and right now, every part of him was screaming that something bad was about to happen. But what could he do? He was just a kid, and everyone loved Dante. His mom, their friends, even his coach at basketball. No one would believe him. Then, in the silence of the night, Malik heard voices downstairs. His heart skipped a beat, and he sat up in bed, straining to listen. Dante was still here. Why was Dante still here? Curiosity and fear gnawed at him, and he quietly slipped out of bed, creeping to the top of the stairs. The house was dark except for the faint glow from the living room, and Malik crouched low, listening intently. "I don't care how you do it," Dante's voice hissed, low and dangerous. "Once we're married, I'll have control over everything. You just make sure the paperwork is ready." Malik's heart stopped. Control over everything? What was he talking about? "I'll marry her, get what we need, and then I'm gone," Dante continued, his voice chilling in its coldness. "The kid won't be a problem." Malik's breath caught in his throat. The kid. He meant me. He scrambled backward, his heart racing, retreating into the safety of his bedroom. His mind was spinning. What had he just heard? Dante didn't love his mom. He didn't care about her at all. He was using her to get something big, and once he had it, he was going to disappear, just like his dad had. But worse, he was going to leave them with nothing, and it would destroy his mother. Malik lay in bed, trembling, feeling utterly helpless. He knew one thing for certain: he had to stop Dante. But how? The next day, Malik felt like he was moving through a fog. His mind was consumed by what he had overheard the night before, and he couldn't focus on anything. His teachers' voices faded into the background, and his classmates' chatter was nothing but static in his ears. His mind kept replaying Dante's words, control over everything. The only thing Malik knew was that he had to tell someone. But who? His mom was too in love with Dante to believe him. That and no one else would take a 10-year-old seriously. No one, except maybe Grandma Yvonne. Grandma Yvonne was Layla's mother, and she had always been the one person Malik could count on. Tough as nails and fiercely protective, she was the matriarch of their family and had a no-nonsense approach to life that Malik admired. She'd raised Layla alone after her husband passed away when Layla was just a baby, and she'd taught her daughter to be independent and strong. But Layla wasn't seeing things clearly now, and Malik knew that if anyone could help him, it was his grandmother. After school, Malik didn't go home. Instead, he made his way to Grandma Yvonne's house, walking the few blocks through their neighborhood to the small, tidy house where she'd lived for decades. His heart pounded with every step, fear and determination warring inside him. When he knocked on the door, Yvonne opened it almost immediately, her sharp eyes narrowing as she took in his expression. "Malik, what are you doing here, boy? Something wrong?" Malik swallowed, feeling the weight of what he was about to say. "I need to talk to you, Grandma. It's about Dante." Yvonne's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "What about him?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in. "I never trusted that man, but your mama's made her choice." Malik sat down at the kitchen table, his hands trembling as he told her everything. He told her about the proposal, about what he'd overheard the night before, and about the gnawing feeling in his gut that had been warning him something was wrong from the start. Yvonne listened carefully, her lips pressed into a thin line as she absorbed every word. When Malik finished, she sat back in her chair, silent for a moment, her eyes fixed on him. "I knew there was something off about that man," she muttered finally, her tone dark. "Your mother's too wrapped up in him to see it, but I've seen men like that before. They come in all sweet and charming, but once they get what they want, they're gone. You did the right thing coming to me, Malik. We can't let this man destroy your mama's life." Malik felt a wave of relief wash over him. "You believe me?" Yvonne gave him a firm nod. "Of course I do. You're a smart boy, Malik, and you've got good instincts. Just like your mama. But she won't believe us without proof. We need to find out exactly what Dante's planning, and we need to stop him before it's too late." Over the next few days, Malik and Yvonne worked together, quietly gathering evidence. Yvonne, with her years of experience and connections, was able to dig up information on Dante's past that confirmed Malik's worst fears. Dante had been married twice before, both times to women with money, and in each case he had taken everything they had and disappeared, leaving them with nothing but debt. "He's a con artist," Yvonne said grimly as she looked over the documents she had found. "This is his game. He finds women like your mama, sweeps them off their feet, and then drains them dry. But we're not going to let him get away with it this time." Malik's hands shook as he looked through the papers. Dante's debts were staggering, his financial history a mess of failed businesses and shady dealings. He wasn't just a liar, he was dangerous. "We're going to need more than just these papers," Yvonne continued, her eyes flashing with determination. "We need to confront him, and we need to make sure your mother sees exactly who he is before it's too late." Malik nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He didn't know how they were going to stop Dante, but he knew one thing for sure. They couldn't let him destroy their family. The day of the wedding arrived, and the house was alive with activity. Guests arrived in a steady stream, filling the air with chatter and laughter as they milled about, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The smell of flowers and food filled the house, and Layla was upstairs getting ready, her joy radiating through every corner of the home. But for Malik, the day felt like a nightmare. The folder of documents sat on the table behind him, the evidence he and Yvonne had gathered, ready to expose Dante for who he truly was. He stared out the window, watching as more guests arrived, his stomach churning with dread. Yvonne had agreed to confront Dante before the ceremony, but Malik knew that no matter how much they prepared, it wasn't going to be easy. He had seen the coldness in Dante's eyes when he thought no one was looking, and he knew that once they confronted him, Dante wasn't going to go quietly. "Are you ready, Malik?" Yvonne asked, her voice steady but filled with tension. Malik nodded, his throat dry. "I'm ready." They moved downstairs, and Malik's heart pounded as he saw Dante standing in the living room, laughing with a group of guests, his perfect suit and too perfect smile making Malik's skin crawl. He was acting like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't been planning to destroy everything. But Malik knew the truth. Yvonne stepped forward, her face hard as stone, the folder clutched in her hands. "Dante," she called, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. Dante turned, his smile faltering when he saw Yvonne approaching, and Malik could see the flicker of something dark pass through his eyes. "Mrs. Yvonne," he said smoothly, his voice too calm. "Is something wrong?" Yvonne didn't waste any time. She walked up to him, holding out the folder, her gaze unwavering. "We know what you've been doing," she said coldly. "You're not marrying Layla." For a moment, Dante's face remained composed, but Malik saw it, the flash of anger in his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," Dante said, his voice tight. "We know about the women you've conned, the marriages, the debts. You're not fooling us, and you're not getting away with it this time." Yvonne's voice was firm, and Malik could feel the tension in the room rising. Dante's smile disappeared, replaced by a look of pure venom. He glanced at Malik, his eyes narrowing. "You should have stayed out of this, kid," he muttered. Before Malik could respond, Yvonne stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare talk to my grandson like that. You're finished, Dante. Now, you can either leave, or we'll call the police." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Malik held his breath, waiting for Dante's response. The man's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. But then, with a cold, calculating look, he stepped back, shaking his head. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly, but there was no warmth in his voice anymore. "But fine. I'll leave." And with that, Dante turned on his heel and walked out the front door, leaving behind the wedding, the guests, and the life he had tried to steal. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions for Malik and his family. The truth about Dante had spread quickly through their small community, and Layla had been devastated by the betrayal. For days, she barely spoke, her heart broken by the man she had thought would finally bring her happiness. Malik had never seen his mother like this before. She was always the strong one, the one who had held everything together after his father had left. But now, it was as though all the strength had drained from her, leaving her fragile and uncertain. In the quiet moments, Malik felt guilty for being the one who had revealed the truth. He knew he had done the right thing, but seeing his mother so hurt made him wonder if there had been another way. He didn't regret exposing Dante, but he hated seeing the pain in his mother's eyes. But slowly, day by day, Layla began to heal. With Yvonne's support and Malik's presence, she found her strength again. She wasn't the same woman she had been before Dante came into their lives, but in some ways she was stronger now. She had been hurt, yes, but she hadn't been broken. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset in silence, Layla finally spoke. "I should have seen it," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have known." Malik shook his head, his heart aching for her. "It wasn't your fault, Mom. He fooled everyone." Layla sighed, her hands resting on her lap. "But you saw it, Malik. You knew something was wrong, and you saved me. You saved us." Malik looked at his mother, the woman who had always been his hero, and for the first time he realized that he had been her hero too. He had stood up for her when it mattered most, and together they had come through the storm. As the weeks turned into months, life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Layla focused on rebuilding her life, taking things one step at a time. She threw herself into her work, and though the pain of Dante's betrayal still lingered, it no longer defined her. Malik too had changed. He wasn't the same boy he had been before all of this had happened. He had grown up in ways he hadn't expected. He had learned what it meant to trust his instincts, to stand up for the people he loved, and to fight for his family, no matter how hard it seemed. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Layla turned to him with a small smile. "You know," she said softly, "we're going to be okay. We've been through a lot, but we're stronger now. And no matter what comes next, we'll face it together." Malik smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. His family wasn't perfect, and their lives hadn't been easy, but they were still here. They had faced something terrible and come out stronger on the other side. Because in the end, family was everything. Thank you so much for watching this powerful tale of Malik's bravery and determination. In the face of betrayal, he found the strength to stand up for his family and protect the ones he loved. We hope this story has inspired you as much as it did us. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this one. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Malik's journey and how you would have handled things in his shoes. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time with another thrilling story.